Hi, Chris aka Zomproof here, and I'm bringing you the first episode of Second Chance Gaming. In this series, we'll be looking at games that had a troubled launch and see if they've received the necessary updates. The key pieces we are looking at is if the game is playable, have the devs kept their pre-release promises, and most importantly, is it fun? Back in 2013, CD Projekt Red released their first trailer for Cyberpunk 2077. Based on the pen and paper RPG by Mike Pondsmith. They were still deep in development of Witcher 3, but fans were already excited for what would come next. It would be another 5 years before fans got another look, and soon after, a release date of April 16th, 2020 was announced. Though it wasn't long into the worst year ever that the game was pushed to September, then November, and finally to December 10th, when it was released to all major platforms and the Google Stadia, except for the Nintendo Switch, and that's probably for the best. Because though it was initially pretty well reviewed, the game wasn't actually super playable for anyone not on a high-end PC. Even during my first playthrough on my Xbox Series X, I had pop-ins, physics issues, weird UI glitches, and NPCs would vanish and then reappear before my eyes. Possibly, my favorite was this. This is what the hosts of Kopeki Plaza are supposed to look like. It makes sense for the world and is a great example of environmental storytelling, except the whole time I played up until the release of patch 1.5. This is what I saw. A little bit different. I don't actually know if it was the patch or the fact that I re-downloaded the game, though I'm going to guess it's probably the latter. And that's on a next-gen console, or current gen. I'm not actually sure when we make that gen transition, but either way, on the last gen, it was basically unplayable. And what happened as a result? Both Sony and Microsoft opened the refund policy to allow people to return digital copies of the game, and Sony even pulled the game from their store just a week after the initial release. As for myself, I got distracted by other games, even though I am currently sitting at about 80 hours of total playtime. So how did the developers respond? Well, CD Projekt Red released 3 hotfixes before the end of the year to fix some of the more glaring issues, as well as shared updates to the roadmap as the anticipated next-gen update and DLCs were pushed out further and further. Rumors arose that management set a release date that development teams knew they would be unrealistic, and multiplayer was delayed to an indeterminate point in the future. The first major patch, 1.1, was released on January 22nd, 2021, which focused on various crash fixes and memory usage. On February 9th, CD Projekt Red announced that they were the victims of a hacker which had gained access to internal systems and even left a ransom note, threatening to release source codes and documents if their demands weren't met, which, well, they weren't. And later that year, the files were posted to 4chan. The hack resulted in a delay in patch 1.2, which was eventually released on March 29th. That patch focused predominantly on gameplay changes like vehicle steering sensitivity and NPC reactions. A few days after the release of patch 1.23, Cyberpunk was available again on the PlayStation Store, though we don't know the specifics about what was in the patch that cleared it for Sony. Patch 1.3 came out in August, which was the first to include some of the promised DLC, which was limited to an alternate appearance for Johnny Silverhand, a couple of jackets, and a special car, along with a ton of other improvements. At this point, I should really mention the patch notes are incredibly massive list of fixes that I really can't just read here. I want to emphasize, though, that developers were clearly putting in a ton of effort at getting this game fixed. Cut to 6 months later, and patch 1.5 was finally released, and with it, next-gen compatibility. Once again, we won't go deep into the notes, but load times were significantly improved, ray tracing was added, and for all platforms, features like apartment renting was added so you could access your stash without traveling all the way back home. Certain character customizations were added if you just didn't really like your haircut, and a bunch of other improvements like, just trust me, it's an incredibly long list. And that brings us to today, or, well, a couple of days ago. So with all that in mind, let's get back to those questions. Question 1, is the game playable? Well, yeah, PC, Xbox Series, and PlayStation 5, the game is very playable. It's also technically true if you have a last-gen console, though honestly, I wouldn't hold my breath on the quality. A big fortunate part, though, is the free next-gen upgrade if you have the last-gen version on your console, so feel free to at least give it a shot. Question 2, have the devs kept their pre-release promises? That's more of a mixed bag. We did get a next-gen version and DLC, though the timeline was completely thrown out the window, and the DLC we've received is pretty much just cosmetic. But multiplayer is still in the works with no timeline on any potential release. And personally, I'm not expecting it to be released outside of some kind of brand new package, maybe even a whole new game. Question 3, is it fun? And here I'm going to piss some people off. The game can be a ton of fun during missions. Infiltrating enemy strongholds, hacking computers, pissing off the corpos is a blast. But in between, the city doesn't feel like it has much life. It's been 10 years since Grand Theft Auto gave us a Los Santos that felt like a living, breathing city. Random NPCs had life to them. To be fair, I'm not saying CD Projekt Red had to give that to us. In fact, you could argue that the game is designed more like your friend is the GM running the show. It feels just as you would playing a pen and paper RPG. Trust me, I know I've played a ton of them. If you stay on their course, you'll have a blast. Otherwise, it's really kind of like a theme park in a way. Great rides, cool things to kind of glance at, and everything else is just kind of pointless. And at the end of all this, would I recommend the game? Yeah, I would. In fact, at the time of recording, PS5 and Xbox Series owners have the ability to download a 5-hour trial of the game. It's a great way to find out if you'd actually enjoy it with no strings attached. Otherwise, the game seems to be on sale quite a bit, so why not give it a shot if for no other reason than having more Keanu in your life? And that's it for the first episode of Second Chance Gaming. Are you willing to give Cyberpunk 2077 another chance? Let me know in the comments below. Also, let me know what games you'd like to see me give a second chance to. And while you're down there, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons as well, as it helps others find the video too. Once again, this is Chris, aka Zomproof. Thanks for stopping by.